Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Willow Center podcast. This is Season 4, Episode 5. I am your host, Chase Cotton, the Community Director here at the Willow Center in Brownsburg, Indiana. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you are watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast streaming app. I am so excited to welcome a guest who's been a client here at the Willow Center. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself briefly, and then we'll introduce the topic.
Hi, my name's Jen, and I came to the Willow Center 14 months ago just to help me deal with life's stressors.
Thanks so much for being here, Jen. It's a real pleasure to have you and get to know you.
Here.
We'll
Thank
ask
you.
Jen some questions here in just a moment to hear more of her story, and we're looking forward to that. So the topic of the month, for the month of May, is mental health awareness, because May, every year in the United States, is Mental Health Awareness Month. And so we thought it would be special this episode to tell the story of someone who has lived experience of mental health, and make it someone else's voice, because you hear my voice a lot. And, Jen was gracious enough and generous enough to give us her time today. I always like to open our episodes with an inspirational quote, as you know. And this quote from one of my heroes, Mr. Fred Rogers, has been a constant source of inspiration for me, in particular as it relates to mental health awareness. So here's what Mr. Rogers said. He said, "Anything that's human is mentionable, and anything that is mentionable can be more manageable. When we can talk about our feelings, they become less overwhelming, less upsetting, and less scary." I love that sentiment.
That is very true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, it is.
So we're just going to kind of dive right into it. I wanted to start, Jen, by just kind of giving you an open floor. Tell us as much or as little of your story as you'd like, and kind of take us in the direction of sort of what exactly does mental health mean for you in your life because of your story?
Well, I am, let's just say, young 50-ish, but I have been a chronic pain patient since I was 29 years old.
Wow.
It started as a devastating whiplash injury. I quit counting at about 50 outpatient procedures to reconstruct my neck.
Wow. Was that due to like a car accident or something like that?
Yeah, somebody rear-ended me.
Oh,
So
awful.
when I was 17,
Yeah.
it didn't show up for some years later.
Mm.
I managed to, still work during that time. I worked in healthcare for 20 years.
Yeah.
Kept my job through that. And then about 7-8 years later, I started getting problems with my lower back. So I have been back in pain management now for 3.5 years.
Okay.
I've had 7 failed procedures on my lower back.
Wow.
So Wednesday I go in for a surgery.
All right.
It's a little outpatient surgery.
Okay.
So life's hard. That can lead to anxiety and depression.
Sure.
I lost my career,
Yeah.
my home, my marriage, my finances. It's a devastating loss, but life goes on. You have to push through, and
Sure.
there's other good things to life. So sometimes I get overwhelmed, yes, and the past 14 or 15 months have been probably the most stressful of my life. I'm getting these procedures done.
Yeah.
I had to move from where I was living.
Okay.
My mom got sick all at the same time.
It always all happens at once, don't
Me
it?
being in healthcare for 20 years, I am her BOA. I took over her care,
Okay.
got her set up. It led to a lot of fights in the family between my sister and my brother and I.
It's always a shame how that kind of stress, when sort of the matriarch or the patriarch of the family is sick, how it puts so much stress on those relationships.
And my mom's changed a lot too. She'll
I'm
be
sure.
89 next month. So,
Wow. Okay.
and we got her back living in her own home,
Okay.
with some help.
Yeah.
But anyway, during this time, 14 months ago, I had a little breakdown in my pain management doctor's office. So she got me the social worker there,
Yeah.
and he set me up here with Angel.
Okay.
So at first I saw her once a week, and then every other week now. And she helps me deal with all of these changes at one time.
Yeah.
Plus, that the health issues that I have, it goes beyond just that. It's other things like fibromyalgia and things that go along with that. So,
Sure.
Yeah, she's been a huge help.
And is this your first therapeutic experience like this? Have you done
No.
any kind of therapy before?
No, can I backtrack just a
go
minute?
ahead. Sure.
So, when all of this was going on with my neck back in maybe 2004, 5, so 20 years ago,
Yeah.
I lost a lot of weight. I mean, a lot of weight, and I couldn't figure out why.
Yeah.
And so the last thing I said was, I've got to get off the narcotics.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I was on narcotics for all those procedures. I said, and actually, before that, I mean, I was scoped up and down, and everything was normal. So they sent me to a psychologist.
Yeah.
And it was the worst experience of my life.
Oh.
He was rude, and he wanted to play games. What he did was, I had lost so much weight, they didn't know if it was related to my mental health.
Sure.
And he asked me, he said, you think you're bulimic or anorexic? And I said, no, not at all. I said, I'm trying to figure out why this is happening.
Sure.
And then he said, he had a little individual Rice Krispie treat on his desk. He said, you like Rice Krispie treats? And I'm like, yeah, sure. He goes, you want one? It rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Are we playing games here? And it was just not a good experience. So
Almost
it took
like
me,
using pretension to try and get some answer he'd already thought he'd decided about you to some extent.
Yeah, he had his beliefs and thoughts without really listening.
Yeah.
And so I quit going.
I don't blame you.
And I was weaned off of all of my medications over a month's time.
And for those who don't know, if you don't know what narcotic means, like those are typically like heavier pain medications that surgeons and doctors will prescribe you after the types of procedures that Jen's describing. Oftentimes they're opioid painkillers, things like oxycodone, hydrocodone, Vicodin. All of these are sort of in the same category as like a narcotic pain medication. So just a little sidebar for the listeners there.
I apologize. I guess the newest words would be, opiate. They use that more often than narcotics nowadays. So I did that, and I said goodbye to those a long time ago.
Yeah.
And because it's not for everybody.
Yeah, sure.
So, I did not have a good experience, and it took me a long time to come back to counseling.
Yeah.
And the social worker that they sent in right there when I was in my doctor's office was extremely kind and understanding.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, I'll give it a chance.
Yeah, good for you.
So
it takes a lot of courage, especially after a bad experience before.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they set me up with Angel, and I can tell you that it's a very appropriate name for her.
I'm
She's
sure she'll be
wonderful.
flattered to hear that.
She's absolutely wonderful.
That's great.
So I come back and back and back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you've been coming for a little over a year now, you said?
14 months.
14 months.
No, 14 months.
Good for you. That takes a lot of commitment, right? I feel like, if for any listener that's never done any sort of counseling or therapy, like it is hard work, right? Like it's not all sunshine all the time. And it's like oftentimes weekly or bi-weekly or at the very least a monthly experience that you have to show up for in order to like make progress and reach the goals that you set for yourself.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a year is a long time. Good for you, Jen.
Thank you.
That's
and
awesome.
I plan on seeing her as long as it takes or as long as I want. So
Love that. Which is a good point. There's autonomy in counseling, right? Like
absolutely.
You have to want to be there. Not many people get better because they're forced to.
Just like anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to want it.
So
you
gotta want to get better.
Yeah.
So let's say for a viewer or a listener who maybe isn't sure, maybe they are feeling some kind of way, but they're not sure what to look for. Maybe they don't know whether or not they need to reach out for help. In your experience, what are some of like the warning signs that you wish you would have known about sooner, early on, from the mental health perspective?
I can name a few.
Okay.
Increased anxiety, irritability, anger, and resentment.
Resentment. Tell me more about that.
Resentment. you get so overwhelmed with the demands placed on you, and somebody who is also codependent that I learned here, which those of you that don't mean, I feel like I always have to be the fixer. And there's also times when I have to say no.
It's just hard. Setting boundaries is hard.
Setting boundaries is extremely hard, especially when it's your mother or your family.
Yeah.
But over the last 14 months, I've learned to say no and set boundaries. And going back to the resentment, another thing that leads to resentment, expectations. Expectations that you place on other people. And I never realized this.
Yeah.
But it could be as simple as a teenage boy not taking out his trash or doing his chores.
Yeah.
You expect that, but yet it sets you up for disappointment.
Right.
And disappointment hurts who? It hurts yourself.
Right. Especially if for whatever reason those expectations are 100% crystal clear, right?
I still struggle with that.
Yeah.
I mean, because, when I take over a lot of care or something for my mother, and it's, for others to step up. Yeah. And, it's just my sister and I taking care of her. So, brother's not in the picture, but hey, that's probably for the best at this point.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to get rid of toxic people in your life so you can get rid of those feelings. You have to let that go. Yeah. Because, again, who does it hurt? It hurts you.
It's just you. Yeah.
Nobody else cares. It hurts you.
So just to recap, some warning signs. If someone's not sure whether or not they need additional support or whether or not they're at a point where they need to reach out, things like increased depression and anxiety, those feelings go along with it. Sometimes you might call it sadness. Sometimes you might call it worry or stress. You might not use these heavier treatment type words. Anger, you said, and resentment are some of the things that catch up to you.
And irritability.
It
usually starts with irritability because you're like, just one more thing piled onto you, one more thing to do, and
kind of feeling on edge,
on edge and overwhelmed. When you get overwhelmed, you get irritable, then you get angry, and you get resentment, and it's depression, anxiety, and it's a big full circle.
Right. Yeah. And all these feelings are kind of interconnected, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah. I think there's a common myth that counseling is just for specific issues. And it's it doesn't have to be. It's not just depression counseling or just past trauma or just substance use, right? You might just feel overwhelmed and you can't define all of these things yet. And you can bring that flood, if you will, with you to counseling and work through someone who's trained to help you suss it out and figure out the different components and how they're influencing the way you feel each day. It doesn't matter what your presenting issue is, right? There might be other stuff underlying.
Counseling is your safe place. You can't always vent to family members,
right,
and friends. Number one, you might not want to talk about it with that specific person.
Yeah.
Number two, you might get judged.
Right.
You will not get judged in counseling. You will not be looked down upon. One of the points here, mental health has and always has had a stigma attached to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting better than it was previously.
Sure.
But it's still out there. And, because people act different than when they have, say, diabetes or kidney failure or because this is mental, not physical.
Right.
So
you can't always see the issue.
It's an invisible illness.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in regards to that stigma, because I agree, there's still leftover chemtrails, if you will, from the stigma of decades past. What do you think is one of the most misunderstood things about the counseling experience that adds to that stigma?
Again, that you will be judged, possibly.
Yeah.
I felt that the first time that I went. My bad experience.
Sure.
You don't want others to know, maybe.
I mean, it's like a lot of fear. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, sure is.
Yeah, a lot of fear involved in it. I think that judgment piece is really key. And I so hate that you had that experience with that psychologist or psychiatrist or whoever it was, because as much as I would love to advocate that every mental health provider in the country or world is good or compassionate or in it for the right reasons, that just isn't true. I can even say from experience, I've had to break up with therapists before, which is a strange experience. So, it's okay to try and figure out which person's going to be the right fit. Sometimes the analogy I use is it's a little bit like dating, or like you're building rapport with somebody and they're asking you questions about your life and you're trying to figure out. So that side tells me you have a story. Tell me.
Okay, just real quick.
Okay.
Since you said that, well, I fired my therapist yesterday, my physical therapist.
Oh, yeah?
He was the assistant. I love my therapist. He was the assistant. I have never done that. However, we're not a good match.
Yeah.
So we'll just leave it at that.
Sounds like that's the kindest way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay. Or part of being in counseling, being in therapy, is advocating for yourself.
Yes.
Right? And that's one of the skills that your therapist, if they're a good one, will teach you and encourage and empower. Right? I think another common myth about counseling is that you're just going to go get told what to do. And that's very rarely the case, right?
No. You're a part of the process of healing and getting better. You work with your counselor to reach those goals.
Yeah.
And you might have to do some journaling or write some things down. It's just individualized care, what works for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I've got a follow-up question to that, just again to try and pull the mystique away from this experience. Was there anything that you've done through your most recent therapeutic experience in the past 14 months where initially you were like, this feels silly, but then eventually you were like, oh, this is actually kind of helpful?
Wow, I wasn't expecting that question.
I know, I'm throwing you a curveball.
You are.
Could be like, maybe another way to put it is like anything that you were just like a little skeptical about at first, but then you tried it.
I don't know. I came in with a pretty open mind.
Yeah.
And not really. I asked her a couple of good books that she could recommend that I read.
Okay, cool.
So I bought a
what
couple
books have those been, if you don't mind sharing?
about codependency.
Okay, great.
And setting boundaries and saying no.
Yeah.
And also Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's book on grieving, the steps through grieving. And my mom is still with us, and I thank the Lord every day for that.
Yeah.
But you can still grieve the loss of somebody that's still here.
Yeah.
When they're not the same anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or, grieve the loss of my career.
Mm-hmm.
Chance to have my own family. I have a great family now, and 2 stepchildren and a grandbaby that turned 2 yesterday.
Oh,
so,
wow, that's special.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I think those are all great tools, great examples. So what I heard you say is that going into therapy and counseling with an open mind is really essential to having a good experience.
Absolutely. They're here to help you and guide you and help you even do exercises at home, whether it's, like I said, journaling, writing things down, writing down your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
They're here to work with you, not against you.
Yeah, that's a good way.
For sure.
Run that back and play it again 3 times for yourself so you remember that. Your therapist is working with you, not against you. Even if sometimes they might challenge you. They might call you on your shiznit from time to time, right?
Oh, and they absolutely should.
Right.
And I've called myself out before she had a chance to. It's not that I'm not learning from you, but, hey, I'm human.
Right.
Nothing big, but I was like, hey, you know what? That passive-aggressive side of me came out, and I'm not proud of it.
Sure.
I'm honest with her. You have to be honest with them, or they can't help you. Just like any healthcare provider. You got to tell your doctor what's going on. You have to tell them about everything. Because if they don't know, then they can provide the wrong treatment or not know how to treat you. Treat you wrong. It's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. So sort of in that context of, you know, sharing, getting more open, staying open-minded in the therapeutic process, having these like take-home activities that you sometimes get. Do you feel like in the last 14 months there's like one thing that you've learned about yourself throughout the therapeutic process? It could be something surprising or something empowering, anything you've learned about yourself.
Just how very codependent that I am.
Yeah.
I am very type A perfectionist. You know, I had to have top grades and National Honor Society in nursing school.
Yeah.
I got every job that I applied for. Because I was a real go-getter and spent the time to take what it takes to do those things.
Yeah.
And when it all came, crashing down, it's really hard for me to not be in control.
Yeah.
Always. And the codependency, well, no, they can't, I'm the only one that can do it the right way. Or if I want it done correctly, I have to do it myself, kind of thing.
Ooh, that one makes me itch. That one's a little too relatable for me.
That one is probably my biggest right there.
Yeah.
And, even back working in healthcare, if you delegate to somebody and it doesn't get done, it's in your name. You signed off on it.
Right.
That's just a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And through the past 14 months, we've been working through it, talking through it, exercising it with those people in my life to say no and set boundaries.
Yeah.
And have I given in? Of course I have. But am I getting better? Of course I am.
Yeah.
And it takes time. It does. You can't just change all of a sudden, or they might not take you seriously. They not, it does. It's a whole process.
Right.
Takes time. Some people might get it off the bat. Me, probably not so much. Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
But do I always practice it? No. I'm going to be honest here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your honesty because, I could sense that being something that, I guess that expectation, if you will, of a new client going in thinking they're just going to get it right away, or their behavior is going to change right away, or their feelings are going to get more happy or more pleasant right away. It can be really frustrating if that's not happening and they don't know why.
And then they don't want to come back.
Right.
But it's important to just, keep coming back. And when you don't feel like it, maybe that's the best time to come back.
Ooh, good advice.
Because, it's like picking up that phone. That phone is so heavy to pick up. But once you do, don't you feel better? Once you come in and talk, and like I said, the safe place to talk about your feelings, you feel better when you leave.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like physical therapy. When I really don't want to go is when I need to go, and I feel better afterwards. So,
definitely.
It's a process like anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's land the plane there with some real practical advice then for our viewers and listeners. Part of the therapeutic experience is learning the fact that the best intervention is prevention. And in the context of mental health, prevention oftentimes looks like self-care practices, something that a lot of us Americans are not great at. So what are some self-care practices that you have learned or maybe tried to improve upon in the last 14 months that you would recommend? What's working for you when you're just at home, managing your feelings, going through life? Like, what's working for you to take care of yourself that you would recommend to others?
Me time.
Me time, right? What's that look like for you?
Me time, hopefully, is maybe a day off of not having to worry about everybody else's problems or things that I have to do or get done.
Yeah.
It's just like somebody working Monday through Friday. Weekends, sometimes you get your things done, maybe relax a little as well. You've got to take me time, and I've got to do it every single day, even if it's an hour when I get the chance. By myself, I might look at my phone. I might go get an ice cream.
Yeah.
I might, I don't know, go look in a store.
Sure.
You got to have me time. I get my nails done because it makes me feel good.
Absolutely. Get that little hand massage while you're doing it.
Oh, yeah, all that good stuff. But, yeah, that makes me feel good. So that's my indulgence.
Yeah.
And everybody's got to find, whether it's a massage, and it doesn't have to cost money. Maybe it's a hot bubble bath for you,
Sure.
or a comfort food. But self-care is really important. You have to take that time to decompress, de-stress, so you can manage the rest of your day.
Yeah.
Or if it's at night, so you can maybe sleep well.
Absolutely.
Because I have a problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
that's so true. I think the real key there that you're telling us is you have to choose it. You have to choose for yourself to give yourself that time. You can't just call it me time, but then like still have your mind running about all these something. Like you have to choose to turn those things off and focus on just you and how you're doing and giving yourself what you need in those moments.
you do. And if that means shutting your phone off, then shut your phone off.
Right.
Or set it on silent, however that works, which I do when I go in those places.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, nothing's that much of an emergency. I'll get back to you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody really needs you, they can call you.
They can find me because usually, my significant other knows where I'm at.
Right.
So yeah, I turn my phone off. I'm not available right now.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's a
you
good.
have
That's a
to.
boundary in and of itself.
It sure is.
Good for you, Jen. So any final words of encouragement that you would want to share, especially with someone who might be on the fence about whether or not they want to get into therapy?
Give it a try. What do you have to lose?
Yeah.
If you don't try, you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up the point I will share with you. The surgery that I have scheduled for next Wednesday is a trial only. It's a 1-week trial.
Wow.
And it's for a spinal cord stimulator for pain control.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a certain amount of relief from it, they will schedule a permanent, and it's a medical implant.
Yeah.
So all these procedures, I'm the veteran, and do I get nervous? Not really. Does this make me nervous? A little bit.
Sure.
But that could be the key to managing a lot of the pain that I have in the lower part of my body at this point.
Yeah.
But even though I'm kind of anxious and scared, how would I know if it will work if I don't try?
Yeah.
What's 7 days?
Yeah.
After 7 days, they pull out the wires, and you and your doctor decide what's best.
Right.
So how am I going to... So again, try it. Who says you have to come back?
Yeah.
It's just like telling your little girl probably to try a certain food, you know? You know what? If you don't like it, you don't have to eat it, but just try
Jen,
it.
it is every night. It is every night. Please.
Okay, that was just a wild guess.
But just try one bite and then decide. I think that's really, really good advice.
It is. And when I say try it, maybe it will take more than one session.
Right.
It could take 2, 3, maybe even 4 for you to decide whether it's for you or not for you.
Mm-hmm.
But give yourself time to decide what you need, what you would like. Discuss it with them.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Jen, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. This has been so helpful.
You're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. That about wraps it up, y'all. That's been episode 5 of season 4 of the Willow Center podcast. We're nearing the end of Mental Health Awareness Month for the year of 2024. But that doesn't mean that building awareness, reducing stigma, spreading the good word about getting the help you need when you need it stops now, right? That is an everyday commitment for all of us here at the Willow Center, and we hope and encourage that it is for you too, whether you're listening or viewing. Please know that you're not alone. If you're in a place right now where you're struggling and you connected with a bit of Jen's story, and you're like, you know what, that sounds exactly like what I'm going through right now, or you know what, I can really relate to that aspect of what she said, will you please give us a call? Just try it. Take her advice. You can find our phone number on our website. It's 317-852-3690. We're here for you. Jen will be here for you too, right?
Absolutely. You know what? If you have questions about chronic pain and management, reach out. I've been through it for many years, and if I can help one person, I would absolutely do that.
That's what it's all about. Thanks
Absolutely.
again, Jen.
Welcome.
Thank you all for listening and tuning in again. We'll be back next month, and the topic for next month is integrity. We're looking forward to it, a great discussion. See y'all later, and take care of yourselves until then.